Welcome to the LSU Sports Insider, brought to you by the journalists at The Advocate, NOLA.com, and the Times-Picayune. Perryn Keys here, coming to you on a Monday with the venerable, long-time Hall of Fame sports writer Sheldon Mickles and the soon-to-be, one day, 30 years down the line, Hall of Fame sports writer Reese Darcey.
I don't know about that.
We're here to talk. Look, it's March. March is basketball time. And obviously the women's basketball season, the regular season, has come to a close. And the men's basketball team is coming down the stretch on a hot streak here. So we are here to discuss it all, to take stock of where the LSU men and the LSU women are. And again, it's that time. It's March. Gentlemen, how you guys doing?
Doing great.
Fantastic.
I feel like I blinked and it's March. Like the season went by so fast.
That is, it does seem like a long way away from Las Vegas and Colorado, but
Yes.
in a lot of ways, it does not seem. Seems like forever ago, and it seems like just a moment ago,
Yep.
all at once. That's usually how that works. So,
I mean, even February usually flies by, and we had an extra day this year, and it still flew by.
yeah, it sure did.
March is where it's at.
That's right. It's crunch time now for men's and women's basketball. We will discuss that. We will discuss the great debate, whether it should be a debate or not. Of course, the Caitlin Clark, Pete Maravich issue, which I'm sure that everybody in this state has a particular position on, or most people have a particular position on. So we will get into all that. But first, of course, a bit of business. If you're watching this and you're tuning in and listening, you know that The Advocate's always been the #1 destination for LSU sports coverage. So please, if you haven't already, please subscribe. Go to theadvocate.com/subscribe. And, of course, LSU men and women's basketball teams are well underway. LSU spring practice now is underway. And so we've got baseball, softball, and gymnastics as well. Softball is the only undefeated team in the nation left. So there's plenty to get a hold of, plenty to get your hands around. And so to do that, to see if you can't do that all in one place, you can sign up for our newsletter. I deliver it straight to your inbox, to your desktop, to your phone. To get the LSU newsletter, the Advocate's LSU newsletter, you go to theadvocate.com/LSU newsletter. We are here on the LSU Sports Insider every Monday and Thursday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever other finer podcasts are found. But more importantly, we're here live on all our social channels, specifically the YouTube channel LSU Tigers on NOLA.com. Please subscribe there. You can catch us live there every Monday and Thursday. If you don't catch us live, you can catch us there on YouTube later on after the fact. So please do that. And of course, as always, we are brought to you every Monday and Thursday by Champion Wealth Strategies. Champion Wealth Strategies is a national financial services firm specializing in the capital markets, securities, insurance, 401ks, and college and retirement planning. Our broker-dealer is LPL Financial Member FINRA SIPC. As you know, investments are not FDIC insured, may lose value, and have no bank guarantee. Contact Champion Wealth Strategies and plan like a champion today. So, Reed, we are about 24 hours removed, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, removed from LSU's regular season finale in the PMAC. They win 77-56 over Kentucky. They have a double bye in the SEC Women's Tournament. They will play the winner between Arkansas and Auburn at 5 o'clock Central Friday in Greenville, South Carolina. That'll be on the SEC Network. First things first, I just wanted to, maybe the best place to start here is the way Kim Mulkey sort of described LSU's performance on Sunday in the PMAC and whether she was completely pleased with it or not. Of course, we know what the answer is, but just sort of reset that for us.
Yeah, she wasn't totally pleased. She didn't think they gave as much effort as they probably should have. But you can look at dog days of the season, last regular season game of the year. You don't have Michaela Williams. She's got a minor foot injury that she's dealing with. So and you're playing, Kentucky, one of the teams at the bottom of the Southeastern Conference. So it's, they didn't play as well as they could have, but they still won by 20. Kim Mulkey wanted them to, they wanted them to be more focused, throughout certain parts of the game. But all in all, it was about what you could expect. It's hard to ask for a whole lot more than a 21-point win.
Right. My read on this is that you're going to have right, wrong, up, down, left, right, whatever. It seems like, especially when you're dealing with 19-year-olds, you're going to have a few of these. Yeah. We know we're better than these guys. I know Kim Mulkey actually said, hey, we played like we could not be beaten, which, of course, any team can be beaten.
Yep.
And Kentucky fought them. a decent bit. Then it didn't ever really go away until the very end, until the Tigers started hitting some shots. Incidentally, LSU starts 0 for 11 from 3-point range. So that's not a good sign going into the conference tournament. But again, to your point, it just sort of felt like, okay, we feel like we've got this thing under control. Maybe we're not fully invested as we are, say, against as we were, say, against South Carolina in the PMAC when the place is jumping and the whole world's watching. So, but all despite that, Angel Reese 22 points, 14 rebounds. Flau'jae Johnson 21 points, 4 assists. And so they go into it as the number 2. They go in the SEC tournament as a number 2 seed. And I don't know. Just tell me where you feel like these players are not coming out of the last game, the most recent game, but just say over the past, I don't know, maybe 5-6 games.
They are playing their best basketball of the season, right. I think, so far. If you look back at the season, Kim Mulkey has spent so much time talking about the need for them to improve on defense. She's like, I want them to play better defense. We need to get better defensively. We need to be sharper. We need to be more focused. We need to communicate better. And so that's Kim Mulkey.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but that's her bread and butter.
Yeah. So she's been stressing the need for that to happen all season, and she always says, every game I've got a goal. She wants to hold opposing teams to under 39.9% shooting. And they've done that in 8 straight games now. They've won all 8 of those games. So it's sort of like they're playing defense to Kim Mulkey's standards, and they're also scoring as well as they could be. They're winning these games by 20-plus points. That's their average margin of victory. They have huge margins on rebounding on the offensive and defensive glass. So they're really, it seems like they're peaking at the right time. Kim Mulkey thinks they're in a good spot heading to the SEC tournament. So this is sort of what they've been building towards. They've been building towards one of the best offensive teams in the country that also has a really strong, tough defense, and that's what they look like right now. So that's sort of what you've been hoping to see, that they could figure it out as we get into the first couple weeks of March, and then maybe make a run, once we get into the tournament.
So as of maybe 2 to 3 weeks ago, there was a major concern about the depth on the LSU roster. Do you feel any better about the depth on the roster or what they're getting out of the roster? And if so, why or why not?
I don't feel any better about the numbers that they have. They still have, 7 players. Mm-hmm. Kim Mulkey has consistently used a 7-player rotation with last year Poa and Aaliyah Del Rosario coming off the bench. So the numbers haven't gotten better. But Poa and Del Rosario, they have been playing a lot better recently. Poa has come in. She's played a little more point guard next to Hailey Van Lith, allowing her to play more of her natural off guard position. And that's brought out a little bit, more scoring from Hailey Van Lith. She's scored, I believe, 15 points in 3 straight games now. So she's playing better. And Del Rosario, she just looks a lot more comfortable, and she looks a lot more confident. She's played a few games these past 8 games. She's had a few good ones. She's finishing well around the rim, protecting the rim well on defense, moving her feet a lot better. So it's like the depth. Kim Mulkey hasn't found another player or two that she can rely on, but I think she trusts Poa and Del Rosario more to be more consistent in the minutes they do provide. So that's these 7 players. That's going to be her rotation once we get into the SEC tournament and the NCAA tournament. So it's going to be, how much can she get out of that core 7 group?
So what happens? Let's play pretend here for a moment. Whether it's the SEC tournament or the NCAA tournament, what happens if Flau'jae and Hailey Van Lith both pick up 3 fouls quickly? What happens then? Play that out.
You have to rely a lot on Poa, and you have to. Some players are going to have to play with foul trouble, and because they just don't have the numbers to rely on. I don't see Kim Mulkey bringing in a freshman like Janae Kent and just throwing her out there in a big game. I don't see her doing that. She likes to keep her rotations tight. She trusts only a certain number of players. So if something like that happens, they're going to have to either play with foul trouble or rely on Poa a lot more, rely on Del Rosario a lot more. The thing that I keep coming to is like, what if there's an injury? What if somebody gets hurt? And we saw that with Michaela Williams yesterday.
Yes.
It's not expected to sideline her for any significant amount of time. But she's got a nagging sort of plantar fasciitis injury in her foot that Kim Mulkey talked about a little bit yesterday. She sat her out as more of a precaution yesterday, hoping to have her healthy for the tournament. But something like that, a twisted ankle here, a turn, a knee, sprain here or whatever, and all of a sudden you could be, leaning on 5 or 6 players, and that could be a big issue in the tournament.
Even if we're at the point of the season now where even if there's not a major injury, and what I mean by that is if you're in the second round or third round of the NCAA tournament, and as you say, somebody rolls their ankle, well, maybe they'll be fine in a couple of days, but you don't have a couple of days.
Right.
You've got these next 8 minutes that you got to get through or whatever it is.
So it feels like their margins for error are smaller than they were last year.
Yeah.
But still, last year, you have to remember Kim Mulkey kept her rotations tight to 8 players throughout the season.
Yes.
There's a little bit more, but it just feels like their margin of errors are a little bit smaller than they were last year around this time.
So they're 26. LSU is 26-4. Last week, the NCAA obviously comes out with their 16 team seedings. LSU was the number 9 overall seed last week. They've got the number 8 NET rating as we go into it. So in all likelihood, they're looking at probably a number 3 or number 4 seed. What can they do if there is anything to be done in the SEC tournament to either solidify number 3 seed or maybe even give yourself a shot to boost up to number 2?
I think they're pretty much locked into a 3 or a 4 at this point. It is a safe bet that they'll host, the first 2 rounds of the tournament. I think once they got through that stretch of 3 games towards the end of the regular season, A&M, Auburn, and Tennessee, once they got through those 3 games and won all 3 of those, I think that's when they cemented themselves as a 3-4 seed. So they're going to have those home tournament games, it looks like. And we've seen, Kim Mulkey, since she's been at LSU, they haven't won, they haven't gone deep into the SEC tournament. Mm-hmm. So we're going to see how she approaches that this year, how overall they approach it. We don't know if she's going to, put all her eggs into it and really try to win the whole thing or not, or if she wants to prioritize the rest for the tournament. We're going to see, but I think no matter really what happens, this SEC tournament, they're sort of locked into that 3-4 seed. I don't think, besides if they like, go on a run in the SEC tournament and end up beating South Carolina, maybe then they can move up to the 2 seed. But we'll see. I think they're pretty much locked into a 3 at this point.
So one other thing before we sort of shift focus a little bit, Angel Reese, Hailey Van Lith, both recognized at halftime Sunday, which to me indicates that these are 2 players who are probably saying their goodbyes to the PMAC crowd. They're going to have, in all likelihood, 2 more games in the first and second rounds of the NCAA tournament at home in the PMAC. But that says to me, I don't want to speak for you. You've obviously done some reporting on this, but that says to me that these are 2 players who are probably going to be saying their goodbyes here in short order. The question then becomes, let's do this. How about this? What would you give us on in terms of percentages, the likelihood that either of these 2 players returns?
I think Hailey is more likely to leave than Angel is. Mm-hmm. So I'd put Hailey maybe. This is very loose here, but 80 to 90%. I don't know for sure, and I don't think she knows for sure yet.
Right.
But we talked to her before the season, and based on what she said, it seemed like she had her eyes on the WNBA and that she was thinking about, working on her game to help LSU win a national championship and to improve herself for the WNBA draft. So I think that's where her focus is. Obviously, she hasn't fully made a decision yet, and she won't say she made a decision until after the season. But based on everything she's said and based on everything that Kim Mulkey has said, it seems like she's off to the W. It seems like that's where her focus is. Kim Mulkey said before the season that before she transferred here, she said, I'll give you 1 year. I'm committing to 1 year. So that's where Kim Mulkey has sort of left things as recently as last week. And Angel Reese, she said the same thing. She's told when she first transferred to LSU, she said, I'm here for 2 years. You have me for 2 years. She knew she had the extra COVID year. She knew that third year was a possibility, but she only committed to 2 years. And so Kim Mulkey has spent the last couple weeks really hinting that this could be the end for both of them because of the initial things that both of them said when they first transferred to LSU, and she hasn't really seen or heard anything to indicate otherwise. Angel has obviously, as she does, she's been dropping hints on social media, been saying like, should I stay or should I go?
Right.
Leaving it up, trying to keep everybody in suspense. I think she's got a more difficult decision to make than Hailey, and I think she's probably a little bit more on the fence. But if you look at the ESPN mock draft that they just did, she's safely in the top 10. They projected her to go to the 7th to the Minnesota Lynx. So her draft position is pretty secure and pretty safe. I'd imagine she's pretty much locked into a top 10 pick because she is that good. And so it would make a lot of sense for her to, take that opportunity while it's there for her.
The only or the major bit of reservation one might have about whether they would go pro or not. If this were the NBA, they'd be going pro.
Yeah.
I'll put it to you like that. But, of course, we saw, and I think many LSU fans had their eyes opened last year to just because you were projected high draft pick in the WNBA draft does not mean that you might get drafted. You probably will get drafted. Does not mean you'll stick.
Correct.
Because as we, again, have seen and discussed over and over and over, as WNBA fans have discussed over and over for 25 years now, you've got 144 players.
Yep.
And that's it. And sometimes first-round draft picks get cut. Not saying that's for sure what would happen with Hailey and with Angel. It's unlikely, but it will give one pause more so than it would in other
We
leagues.
saw what happened to Alexis Morris and LaDacia Williams. If you want to make a team, you really need to be in those top 15 picks.
That's correct.
That's really where you need to be in order to be safe and comfortable making a team. I think just because Angel Reese is so good, the caliber of player she is, and the force of personality that she is, I can't imagine a team would cut Angel Reese, if they drafted her. But again, it's sort of like what people don't understand about the jump to the WNBA. Some people seem to think that either Angel Reese or a player like Hailey Van Lith would be taking a sort of a pay cut to go to the WNBA. That's not true.
Not true.
Because all their NIL deals are just endorsement deals that are separate from LSU or any of the schools that they go to. So those businesses, those brands are going to want to follow Angel Reese into the pros. And so she's going to be making more money the second she gets drafted.
She's still going to be a social media superstar,
Right.
and that carries with it so much weight.
Yes, her bank account is going to be bigger when she gets to the W because she'll be making a salary on top of all her endorsements. So
State Farm is not going to stop following Caitlin Clark.
No,
Yeah.
they're going to follow her to the end of the world. So it's like it's like the NIL stuff, Angel's financial earnings. It just gives her more flexibility. She's not turning down. It's not like the difference between $0 and $1 million. She has that flexibility. So that's part of the decision. I'm sure it's not a very huge factor, but it's part of it as well.
This is the LSU Sports Insider, brought to you by the journalists at The Advocate, NOLA.com, and the Times-Picayune. You know where to find all the writers' great work. That's at theadvocate.com, so please subscribe. Go to theadvocate.com/subscribe, whether that's print or digital, if you have not already. And stay up to date with everything, whether that's news of players coming and going, whether we've got LSU men's basketball, baseball is going on, underway with a big weekend over in Houston this weekend. Softball is the only remaining undefeated team in the nation. Gymnastics on a run for a national championship, perhaps. And, of course, spring football underway, Brian Kelly's third season. So it's plenty to get a hold of, plenty to get your hands around. Get it all sent to you, to your phone, to your inbox, to your desktop with the LSU newsletter. You get all the headlines delivered straight to your inbox. To get the LSU newsletter, you sign up at theadvocate.com/LSU newsletter. We are here every Monday and Thursday on the LSU Sports Insider. On all our social channels, specifically the YouTube channel, LSU Tigers on NOLA.com. So please check us out there. Subscribe to that YouTube channel. If you get a moment, you can catch us there live every Monday and Thursday. And if you don't catch us live, you can catch us there after the fact. We are also on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever other finer podcasts are found as well. And, of course, we are brought to you every Monday and Thursday by Champion Wealth Strategies. To learn more about those fine folks, go to championwealthstrategies.com and plan like a champion today. So shifting focus for a moment, we're going to bring back women's basketball in a hot debate, if it were. very sort of first take, first and 10, first things first, and all those other kind of shows, type of debate. But we'll bring it back and kick it around toward the end of the show here. But let's talk a little bit about the men's basketball team. Sheldon, the LSU men go up to Nashville. Obviously, Jerry Stackhouse probably winding down his stay in Nashville, and not a great season for Vanderbilt. But LSU does what they're supposed to do. Jordan Wright, 15 points, 7 rebounds on Saturday. LSU gets off to a great start. They shoot 56% in the first half, and they win by 14 points. This is 4 wins in 5 games. This is level of competition. Regardless, this is signs of progress for year 2 under Matt McMahon.
Yeah, it is. And, the funny thing is that they had that rough patch there where they played, I think it was 6, maybe 7 games against all the top teams in the league.
Yep.
And we knew this was coming up. Now, they lost to Mississippi State, but they beat Kentucky, they beat South Carolina to end that big stretch. Well, Mississippi State was technically the end of that stretch.
But those 2 wins were huge and unexpected, Kentucky and South Carolina.
Absolutely.
No question.
And at one point, there was a 5-game stretch. Let me put it this way. At one point, I thought if they won 1 game out of that 5-game stretch, it would be great. I thought if they got 2, it'd be even better, obviously, a bonus. And they did get 2 out of it.
Right.
They did lose the game to Mississippi State right after that. But they've beaten, Georgia and Vanderbilt this last week. And you have to win those games. You have to win those games. They've climbed up to tied for 7th in the league. Much different than a year ago, as I wrote this morning. Much different than a year ago where they were the 151st net team. Today, they're 88th. Still not where you want it to be. Tied for 7th is not where you want to be in the SEC. But I think Matt McMahon is trying to build this thing a little bit at a time. And as he said after the game Saturday, it's a big step for him to get to a tie for 7th. Now, they lose the tiebreaker with Mississippi State. If it were a two-team tie, they would lose the tiebreaker to Mississippi State. But at this point, they could finish 7th, 8th, 9th, or 10th seed in the SEC tournament next week. And I think 10th wouldn't be
ideal.
You wouldn't want to be 10th. Obviously, you don't want to be 9th. 7th or 8th, I think, is a great improvement from last year. And I think the league this year, the top half of the league is a little stronger than last year. And they've lost to those teams. They lost 2 games to Alabama, 1 to Auburn, 1 to Tennessee, and 1 to Florida. So 5 of the 8 losses have come to, in even Mississippi State, 6 of their 8 losses have come to real quality teams.
Again, in case anybody has forgotten, LSU was 2-16 in conference last year. They, of course, came out of the gate, upset Arkansas, and everybody says, "Wow, well, look, maybe they've got something here." And I will be the first to tell you, Sheldon, we talked about this on our previous podcast, but he assembled a roster out of spare parts. Essentially, we thought he had some nice pieces there. I'm bringing one name. I'm just pulling one name out of a hat. I don't mean to single him out, but last year when they signed a guy like Kendall Coleman, Player of the Year in the Southland Conference, I thought, well, okay, here's a guy who can give you 8, 10, strong minutes off the bench, and he's a quality player. And it turns out they did not have the guns, so to speak. 2-16, no matter how you slice it, from 2-16 to now 8-8 in conference, they've quadrupled their win total in the SEC. I'm sorry, but if anybody would have told, speaking only for myself, Sheldon, but I'm curious to see what your 2 cents on this is. If anybody was walking out of the PMAC after a loss to Mickles State, saying, "Well, yeah, I think they got a chance to finish above 500 in conference play," I think maybe somebody would have said, you're sprinkling cocaine on your cornflakes or something. This is just not something that you saw coming. So, I mean, again, we don't beat this thing over everybody's head, but I mean, this is a sign of progress, and you've got a team. Really, more to your point, Sheldon. Okay, they lost to the upper end. They got run out by Alabama. They fought back against Tennessee and against Auburn, but they're just outgunned there, and that's fine. The rest of these other sort of 50-50 games, similar talent, similar record, things of that nature, they've usually held their own against those teams, and if not played, and they played hard too. They played hard against some of these better teams in the conference as well. They go up to Arkansas, 6 p.m. Wednesday in Fayetteville on the SEC Network. Arkansas 121 NET rating. not having a good year, which is a bit of a surprise, I think, to all of us because we think that Muss is a good coach. 14-15 overall, 5-11 in the SEC. They are coming off I saw this 275th in the nation in point differential, which is shocking. But they gave Kentucky a fight, and as you know, probably better than all the rest of us, you go up to Bud Walton Arena. That's sort of quietly, not so quiet, if that makes any sense. That's one of the better atmospheres in the SEC. So this is not a given.
Well, if you don't mind me going back a little
Yep.
bit to what you started before Arkansas, just to finish that off a little bit, 12 of their 16 losses in the league last year were by double digits.
Yeah.
So that was a real telling. Just weren't competitive
As
in a lot of
opposed to
those
like
games.
the Florida game.
This
Maybe you should have
year-
won, maybe not. But I mean, that was a one-possession game, and they were in the fight.
Out of the 8 losses this year, 3 of them were by 4 points or fewer.
Right.
Could have won that Georgia game real easily. Florida, Jordan Wright missed that shot at the end, and he'll be the first to tell you he felt terrible, obviously, and should have made the shot. But that's the kind of guy he is, and it kind of ate at him a little bit. Mm-hmm. But even if he makes that shot, they may get blown out by 10 points in overtime.
Right.
I mean, Florida, it's a tough place to play. So that one was a kind of a 50-50. The Georgia game, that's the one that might haunt them here a little bit, the Georgia at Georgia. But, when they started 2-0 in the league this year, I thought at the beginning of the year, I said, look, they win 4 or 5 games. 5, I think, was what I figured. They win 5 SEC games this year. That'd be great. Mm-hmm. It'll be an improvement from last year. Then when they won the first 2, I was telling people, didn't write it down.
Yeah.
I said I thought they could win 8, maybe 9 if the ball bounced their way. If they got a win here or there where they weren't supposed to. And maybe that's Kentucky game, or a South Carolina game. But I really think it just shows a lot of the improvement. If you look at their field goal stats, defense, field goal offense, and then 3-point offense and 3-point defense. All 4 very, very improved from last year. So I think that shows a lot of what he's trying to do last year. Like you brought up Kendall Coleman. The players he brought in last year, other than K.J. Williams, were kind of, just, I don't want to say leftovers, but
you had a bunch of mid-major players playing in the SEC.
Correct,
I mean,
correct.
And your hope, his hope had to be, well, let's see if we can get the most out of these guys.
Right. And I think it showed, when the guard play was really bad last year, and I think it's vastly improved this year. Obviously, Trey Hannibal's playing well. Jordan Wright, does everything. Trey Hannibal gets 7 or 8 rebounds a game here lately in the last month or so,
which you don't expect.
A 6'2" guard to get. So I just really think they've made really great strides. And what Matt McMahon has wanted to do from the very start, he likes to develop players. He talks about developing players. And you look at guys like Terrell Ward and Jalen Reed and Mike Williams this year. He's got a guy named Corey Chess that's redshirting this year. And then he's got a couple coming in this year, a guy named Robert Miller, who's a 6'11" forward. And I think the name escapes me a little bit. The second guy I think it's Curtis Gibbons, I believe, from Memphis. So, he's got some pieces that are coming in. If he could keep these guys that he's got now in the fold, he could develop guys over 3 or 4 years. That's what you had to do at a place like Murray State,
right?
At where he coached before at Appalachian State. You bring guys in and you expect to have them 4 years.
It's also a little counterintuitive, though, in the day of the transfer portal and NIL. It's not to say it can't be done, because clearly he's doing it, and it's not to say he won't go into the portal himself, clearly, because he did. It does look like signs of progress, though. I will say, just sort of in closing, as they close out the season here, I don't want to speak for you, but I'm going to call Arkansas a toss-up game. They should be and will be favored when they go. They'll host Missouri to close out the regular season. We'll see where they land in terms of seeding for the SEC tournament. But just why don't we take a moment to just lay out, what's their shot in an NIT bid?
Well, the NIT changed this year.
Yes.
The NCAA owns the NIT now, and they changed it, and I guess it happened over the off season, the summertime. It kind of slipped by me because I didn't know it. until about a month ago.
No, I didn't either until you told me. Yeah.
About a month ago, I learned about this. But the thing is now that it's the Power 5 conferences plus the Big East now in basketball. So those 6 conferences are going to get 2 automatic NIT berths. And in the past, the NIT, if you won your conference, and I'm talking about the mid-majors and the low majors, if you won your conference regular season, you lost in your tournament and didn't make the NCAA tournament, you got an automatic bid to the NIT.
Right.
Well, those are gone now.
Right.
So you're taking your top 6 conferences in the NCAA, and let's use an example. SEC, I think, is going to get 7 teams in right now, unless Ole Miss
into the NCAA tournament.
NCAA tournament, unless Ole Miss or Texas A&M just comes, wins out the rest of the way and gets to the SEC finals. But let's say 7 get in. Well, right now the next 2 teams in net rankings are Texas A&M and Ole Miss, and LSU is only about 9 spots behind Ole Miss. But still, the NIT would take Texas A&M and Ole Miss if they finish the next 2 spots. And it goes strictly by net rankings, not by anything else.
Right.
But then LSU could still get in even as the number 10 team in the league, but with a good record. I mean, here they are, they sitting 16-13. Let's say they split the last 2, 17-14. Let's say they win the first SEC game, they'll go 18-14. Lose in the SEC 18-15, that's good enough to get them in the NIT. Because their net ranking is not going to fall much below 90, 91, even if they lose a game here and lose a game in the SEC tournament.
88 right now.
Yeah, 88 right now. So I think the chances are very good of getting in the NIT. If they were to get one of those 2 spots, automatic spots, they would host a game. And if they don't, then they would be an unranked, unseeded team in the NIT. I'm getting NIT and NET mixed up. But they would be an unseeded team in the NIT, and then they could be sent anywhere.
Right. NIT is not the sexiest thing out there, but by the same token, I was thinking about this. I don't know how this came up, but I was looking through archives and I saw the front page from when LSU defeated the Raging Cajuns here in the PMAC, the Will Wade versus Bob Marlin duel, the great duel.
The near melee in the
that was a sign of progress. That wound up being, and if you look back on it, that was okay. That was Will Wade's first step toward building what wound up being quite a team to contend with in the following seasons. So it's not nothing.
Well, yeah, and the thing is, it's better this year because they got rid of.
I know what you're saying.
I'm not trying to
God bless them,
anybody.
but let's say TSU wins the SWAC.
Mankato State is not going to be there.
Right,
if they finish,
right.
Second, if they win the conference and then, and nothing against Mankato State, so or anybody else for that.
Got plenty of Mankato State fans listening to the podcast.
For that matter, I don't need any nasty email, but no, it's just I think it's going to be a stronger field.
Yeah,
obviously, and I mean, even you look at the Big 12. I mean, they're probably going to get 9 or 10 teams in. So that last 2
probably
teams
the best league, the best league in
exactly,
the league.
And they're going to get 2 teams in NIT.
Right.
So their whole league is going to some kind of postseason tournament.
It's pretty incredible.
And I mean, maybe in the past, the 11 and 12 teams in the Big 12 couldn't get in because it was taken by. And look, the little guys are going to probably be griping because they don't have that entree into the NIT anymore.
Right.
But,
fair, unfair, we can debate that, but one way or the other, the upshot is it's probably, certainly it's something that TV probably wants, but because you're going to have more brand names, and so it's going to be, the talent pool and the level of competition in the NIT is probably a little bit better than it has been in the previous 5 or 6, 7, 8 years. One more thing we need to discuss. I don't know if we need to discuss it, but we ought to discuss it, and that's on the tip of everybody's tongue, especially after Sunday. I call it the great debate. I don't know if it really even should be a debate, but we do know that, look, no matter how you slice it, I think the ratings would bear this out. Certainly the lines that are piling out of visiting Big Ten arenas would bear this out. The number one draw this year in college basketball, men's or women's, is Caitlin Clark. This is anecdotal, and I understand that, but I will say that if I'm surfing through games and I see Utah versus Colorado Pac-12 men's game, I'm probably going to keep flipping. If I come in on Caitlin Clark shooting from the logo, I'm staying. You know, it's
Yep.
she's as fun to watch as a player can be. And I know we mentioned this previous podcast when LSU defeated Iowa for the title last year. One of the lasting images I have is Kim Mulkey stopping Caitlin Clark in the handshake line, looking her directly in the eye and saying, "Generational player," which she is. She has amassed now 3,685 points. That is the most by any. It is now the most by any women's or men's player in basketball, in NCAA basketball.
NCAA Division I basketball.
Well said. Yes. Pete Maravich, of course, had 3,667 points. Somehow this has evolved, and if you want to say that we're every bit as guilty in terms of advancing this thing, I don't know how I don't know how you can't make note of it, because it is a noteworthy achievement. No matter how you slice it, we can now say that there are different records as recognized by the NCAA. There's a men's record and a women's record. But no matter how you slice it, Caitlin Clark can walk around for the rest of her life saying, "I scored more points in college than Pete Maravich." That's an achievement. I think we can say it's an achievement.
And it's a fact.
Yeah, it's an achievement, and it's a fact. Who's better than the other and all this other kind of stuff. Sheldon, I think I know where you stand on this, where you just say it's sort of a silly argument. But, you know, I bring this up in part because I know you had the pleasure and luxury and privilege to have seen Pete Maravich play live. I just, tell me what you think about these two players, and just generally speaking, and if you would, give us a history lesson. Give us a little reminder of what Pete was like when he was playing over there in the Cow Palace.
Well, I never saw any games in the Cow Palace.
I stand correct. In the Superdome for sure, right?
I saw a couple when they played Tulane.
Oh, okay. That's right. Yeah, because you would have been in New Orleans.
Fieldhouse now.
Yeah.
But I saw a couple of his games there. When he was a senior, I was a freshman in high school, and I may have seen they played Tulane twice a year back then. May have played Loyola. I'm not sure. They may have played in Loyola Fieldhouse, but saw him very limited on TV because back then we only had one SEC game of the week. Right. That was it. So saw him very limited, but I saw him plenty of times in the Superdome where you could get a $1 ticket at Shoot. Trying to remember the name of it. It's escaping me now. It was a shoe store. Yeah. And they sold $1 tickets. Right. Up in the terrace. And if you got there early enough, you could be right at midcourt and on the first row, second row of the terrace level.
It's probably good seats too.
It's not very bad at all. And saw many of his games there, including the night he just shredded the New York Knicks for, I want to say 67.
I was just looking that up points on YouTube.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly, but that was, and he fouled out with about a minute and a half to go, if I'm correct.
Is that right?
It was a charging call. It was a very, very bad call. And so he may have had 75 that night at the end. But, yeah, saw him play, saw the wizardry, saw the ball handling. And I think, the thing about him is that the way he used to make the ball, it was almost like it was on a yo-yo. And I've seen that phrase used. Never, dreamed you'd see something like that again, because it's, I don't want to say it was Showtime. It was Showtime.
It was.
But he would dribble and he'd pop the ball in the air and he'd do something with his left hand and then slap it left or slap it right to a guy breaking to the basket. I mean, that was
the underhanded 75-foot pass to his, outlet pass to his buddy, on the break or whatever.
Between the legs to the guy in the post and stuff like that. So, I saw him play, and look, take nothing away from Caitlin Clark. I think they're very similar players. They like to share the ball. They like to shoot the ball. But when they need to pass it, they're going to pass it. And I think the thing that separates it, though, in my mind is, this happened about maybe a month and a half ago when I started seeing, well, she's going to break Pete Maravich's record. And the thing that kind of stuck in my craw was that, it's two records. It's a men's record. Pete's got his record. She's got her record now. Right. It's not one record. The NCAA does not have a combined record. Which I love it that she's going to be called. This is how it should be said. She scored more points than anybody else in Division I basketball history. And if you want to compare her with Pete, that's fine. But don't say she broke Pete Maravich's record. There's no record for combined points.
Which I find
combined
you were saying before the mics heated up that I didn't realize this, or if I did, it just sort of I never put two and two together that there are men's records and women's records in terms of players. The coaching records are actually counted in the same list, which kind of men's and women's, correct? If I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah.
So that kind of blows me away because you're talking about. I mean, is it two different sports or is it not? You know?
And see, I don't even know if there is two for the coaches because I didn't look it up before we started talking about it. But I'll give you an example. I've covered track for 40 years out at LSU. Let's just say the NCAA record for the 100-meter dash is 9.98. And it's a little bit lower than that. I couldn't tell you right now. For the men.
Right.
Let's say some young lady comes along.
Well, what did she carry on when she won the national championship?
Probably 10.5
something?
No, 10.80 something maybe.
Oh,
10.70.
okay. Good.
So
gracious, she's cut down then.
Let's just say for giggles here, some young lady comes along and runs 9.82.
Right.
You can't say she broke his record.
Right.
There's a men's record and there's a women's record.
First of all, it's some young lady runs a 9.82. That's like breaking news times a billion. FloJo is the best to ever do it. She ran a 10.49.
it may be a bad analogy there, but it was just off the top of my
to your
head.
point, I mean, the men's, nobody is comparing. Who's got the 100-meter record, world record?
Usain Bolt.
Although it was, so Bolt was like, I don't know, 9.6 something or
9.59 maybe or
did he
something.
get down to
Something like that.
Whatever that is, it doesn't take anything away from FloJo's record,
Right,
which is 10.49.
exactly,
And nobody's still touched that. Nobody's ever really even sniffed that record in 35 years. So God bless.
And
Sha'Carri may get there.
Yeah, and my colleague Scott Rabelais points out to me like Mondo Duplantis.
Yeah.
He's jumped 20 feet 6 inches for the pole vault, cleared 20 feet 6 inches. Scott checked out the women's record. The women's world record is like 16 and a half feet or something like that. Does that make her any less than Mondo? No, she's got her record.
She's still got the world record.
He's got his record. It's a world record. It's an NCAA record. It's great, and I like what Caitlin Clark's doing for the game, obviously. But I mean, just don't say she broke Pete's record.
And if someone comes along and outjumps Mondo, then it's a big deal, and it's something we should talk about. And it's something we should celebrate. That's like that's it. Like it's not. It's like we get caught up in comparing the two and talking about the words we use and the records. At the end of the day, it's something that no player of all the players that have played Division I basketball over the last 54 years is something that no player has ever done. So it's significant in that regard, in that Caitlin Clark is the first one who scored more points than Pete Maravich. And it's such a good localized story here because people love Pete Maravich, man.
Yes.
Like they take a lot of pride in that record. So that record is a huge deal around here, and anytime we get a chance to talk about it, people do not hesitate to weigh in and share their thoughts on it, because I think people take a lot of pride in that record, and they're almost sort of like really protective of Pete and his legacy.
That's a good way to put
and
it.
What he did,
yeah,
and what he did in an LSU uniform and a New Orleans Jazz uniform. I've heard the stories. I've heard everything people have said about him, and it's just. It's just like when you look at a picture of Pete Maravich and you look at a picture of Caitlin Clark, it's like they've got that same skinny, bony build with the dark hair. It's almost like it's almost uncanny,
Both got a lot of showmanship to them.
Yeah, exactly. So
fun to watch.
So it's just almost fitting that she's the one to come along and outscore him. So it's a really cool story, one that I've enjoyed writing about and covering, and so hopefully I'm just keeping my fingers crossed that somehow LSU and Iowa cross paths in the NCAA tournament
Would
again.
love to see them paired in the same bracket. Listen, is Iowa projected number 2 right now? Is it?
2 or 3, I think.
Okay.
I'd have to look again.
So it would take some doing probably, for them to meet up again. But
Iowa beat Ohio State. They might move up a little bit.
That's true.
That was a big win for them. So
huge win.
Depends.
You know what I thought was funny? In the off season, somebody didn't come, and maybe they did. I don't know. Somebody did not come to Kim Mulkey or Scott Woodward and say, "We'll give you $200,000 to come play in Las Vegas or one of the big NBA arenas. We're gonna make a ton of money on this thing." And I don't know if one school or the other didn't want to play. I have no idea, because you cover the women's team. But I have no idea how it did or didn't happen or what didn't happen. But I thought it would have been great.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
Maybe not the first game of the season like LSU played in Las Vegas. They could have played Christmas week or something like that.
Yeah.
I guarantee you they would have killed it with ratings, and the cash money would have been flowing in.
Yeah. It would have been really fun.
All the more reason for the NCAA selection committee to maybe think long and hard about where they see teams and how they can maybe arrange for the greatest probability of those two teams meeting back up, unless, as we've seen in previous projections, unless LSU winds up in the same bracket as Baylor. That would mean just as much locally, would not have the same national appeal, but people would be tuning in for that.
It'd be like lighting a match to a can of gasoline.
I'll buy my ticket. I'll be watching, as would so many other people around the world, around the nation. So we will leave it there. We are coming down to the stretch here, obviously in basketball. Baseball is heating up. Spring practice is heating up. The gymnasts, the LSU gymnasts, are going to be trying to run down a title here within the next month. And softball and everything else under the sun is going on. So stay with us if you would. Please subscribe to The Advocate if you have not already. Go to theadvocate.com/subscribe. And stay up to date with everything with our LSU newsletter. To do that, you go to theadvocate.com/LSU newsletter. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever other finer podcasts are found. It's the LSU Sports Insider. And more importantly, perhaps, you can find us here every Monday and Thursday on all our social channels, specifically the YouTube channel, LSU Tigers on NOLA.com. If you check out that channel and subscribe to that channel, you can find us there live every Monday and Thursday. If you don't find us there live every Monday and Thursday, you can find us there after the fact and call that up whenever you like. So we would appreciate if you did that, and we always would appreciate us also if you check out our fine sponsor of this program. The LSU Sports Insider is always brought to you by Champion Wealth Strategies. To learn more about them, please go to championwealthstrategies.com and plan like a champion today. This has been fun, gentlemen. I appreciate it. It's March. It's basketball time. It's March Madness time. So for Reed Darcey, Sheldon Mickles, for Amelia Cotton behind the glass, glad she's back. It's good to see you again. This is Perryn Keys. This has been the LSU Sports Insider.